Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 141 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week we're playing catch up because we skipped last week because last week was Christmas.
It
Last
was.
week was also the end of the race to world first. Um, congrats to Echo. Spoilers. Congrats to Echo for taking it again. Um, and also we got a big announcement about the patches we're gonna get over
Yes.
the next year. That we're
Awesome.
gonna be talking about. But for all of that, uh, actually, should we talk about Race to the World first before we talk about our progression?
I think so. I think we can sort of
Yeah.
dive into maybe race, then we can talk about our progression stuff from there.
So
Um,
when last we spoke, they were just starting to. I feel like they were just starting. Or no, okay. They were wrapping up Runekeeper Diurna. Like I think
yeah,
Diurna died like 2 hours after the last podcast.
yeah,
Um, and so then we started seeing Mythic Rajagath, and uh, well, that took until Friday. Um,
yeah,
and the story of the race is basically that the only reason it died on Friday is because of a nerf that was heavier handed than they expected to the enrage timer in the final phase of Razagath.
yeah.
Um, so the Razagath fight as a whole, those that weren't keeping too close an eye on the World First race, was kind of a series of one of the guilds hits a wall gets nerfed, the other guild hits a wall, the wall gets nerfed, and that just happened over and over again. They
Back and
had
forth.
the intermission one ads got nerfed they by like 50%.
50% HP, which is a massive amount.
Yeah, that's a
Like I don't.
huge miss in tuning.
I I forget who it was. I think it was either I forget it was Echo or Liquid, but one of them for one of their attempts sent 19 people to one side
Right.
with heroism and couldn't
Yeah.
kill the first ad.
Yeah.
Or something like
Yeah.
something ridiculous like that.
and
So
and that's the kind of thing that you literally cannot outgear.
yeah,
That wasn't a, oh, we need another reset of gear and then we'll come back and we'll be fine. It was, this is not possible.
yeah,
Like actually mathematically impossible. But then like Storm Surge I think got nerfed as well. Something about Phase 2 got nerfed. Um,
yeah.
which Storm Surge is the shield that you have to break, and if you don't break it in time, it explodes and it wipes the raid.
It, the shield got a nerf in its I think it's in its amount. Um, Basically the way that it worked, and like I think Max does a pretty good job of like explaining this, is like like what you were explaining is like each time one of the guilds got to like the next part of the phase, Blizzard nerfed it, but it wasn't a like minor nerf. It was like 50% for
Yeah,
the ads. I think the shield actually got a like 25 to 50% nerf, like
I
the
think it
storm
was
surge shield.
30%, but yeah,
So it's a fairly substantial amount. And then in phase three, even I think even the intermission two ads were nerfed slightly.
yeah. I
Um,
missed that entire piece of progression though, so
yeah,
I'm
and then I got to catch most of Liquid's progression through that, and then yeah, and then phase three was sort of nerfed on Friday pretty heavily. I think they added something like 45 seconds to the enrage, which is basically they just made the platform the way the phase three is. There's like this storm around the outside of the platform that slowly constricts into the middle. They basically gave it more time. They slowed that down.
yeah, they
They
slowed it
slowed
down a
that down. I
lot.
think they slowed tornado spawns down too. There are
Oh,
tornadoes
did
that
they?
also go towards the boss. You have to soak because if they hit the boss heals. Um,
I didn't
so
realize
yeah,
they
it was
also slowed that down. That's pretty big.
yeah. So I mean, the entire like I mean the way that this ends, a bunch of nerfs, but then literally 15 minutes after that, phase three set of hot fixes goes in. Echo kills it on their first pull into phase three.
Yeah,
And so like they had already been raiding all day. They had a couple of like sub 10% wipes previous to that, but I think of 3% was like the lowest they had gotten it. But yeah, then they hit sort of a really good pull and ended up killing it right after the nerfs, which I think is the biggest contention of this whole race
yeah,
is the timing. So for people who don't know, it's basically Liquid and Echo that are sort of the top two guilds, right? And they raid at different timings. So like essentially nowadays, as Echo is sort of ending their day, Liquid is starting their day. Liquid basically pushed their start times back this raid for the first time to align to maintenance. Basically,
Yeah.
they would start earlier in the day. The problem is with Tuesday maintenance, they've sat around for 2 or 3 hours. They basically said, "I will just start at 11 Pacific every day raid wise and go to like 1 o'clock Pacific time." So it was
Right.
a
So it's not
fairly
like
long day.
they're sleeping
Sorry.
in. They're operating
Yeah.
basically on a different time zone than the one they're actually like living in the duration of the
Yeah.
race.
Well, no, they were in California this year
Right. I'm saying
for this raid.
I'm saying it's like they were 2 hours further
Yeah,
to
exactly.
the
Yeah.
west than that.
Yeah. So they basically did all that, and these nerfs basically hit at I think 11 Eastern or sorry 11
Right.
Pacific time,
And
right as they were getting in.
the problem, so they let the guilds know somewhat in advance. It was not very much. Like
Yeah, a couple
it,
hours I think they said.
yeah, not very much. Maybe enough time that if they had rushed everybody in, they could have got it. But they didn't tell them when it was happening. They only told them that it was happening.
Right.
So I don't know if there was no no pressure, no rush on the liquid side to be like, yo, we have to get in so that we're ready for this hotfix because they don't know if the hotfix is going to be at the regular time that they start
Yeah.
raiding, or if it's going to be, you know, 2 or 3 hours after they start raiding, and they don't want to like screw everybody's sleep up over a hotfix that they didn't actually need to rush for. Then it turns out that
Exactly.
they did because it got applied right around the time, like 15 minutes before, or no, it was right around the time they would normally start raiding. And
Yeah.
it's just that
Well, no.
Echo was
Yeah.
already going.
Exactly. They already a couple of deep pulls. They were already sort of warmed up. So yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of I think the biggest thing that people talk about is like the timing of it. But I think to like Max's point, because I listened to his sort of recap of all this. It's like there
Yeah,
was never a good time to apply this hotfix
yeah,
because like apply it later in the day. It's at the end of Echo's day. They're probably tired. They're fatigued. Like, can they
yeah,
even continue to like make use of it? And then Liquid gets, they're still fresh. They get it the entire time.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I think the other thing too is like it's not the fact that the nerfs hit. It's just like to lose the race that way was sort of what they were most upset about, which is like
yeah,
you basically lose it
yeah,
on a timing thing, right? Like
yeah,
he still said like he still mentions like Echo still played well. I think Echo still probably played, better. As always, like I think they're the execution sort of kings and queens of like, you know, they lock it in, they get a strat and they will nail it every time. Like they'll be
yeah,
perfect. And they hit that with their kill attempts. It just so happened that the nerfs hit right before that and gave him plenty of time to kill the boss. So
yeah.
um
I like the only fair time to apply a nerf like that is before this actually gets pulled by either team.
yeah.
Like that's the only fair time to do it, and I think that really applies to a lot of the nerfs that we saw. Like we saw nerfs to Kurog, to his damage check on the intermission ads. We saw nerfs to Dethea on her overall health. We saw nerfs to
And an extra
um
ad, actually.
and an extra ad.
Thea Thea got an extra ad too.
She
Yeah.
wait.
She got a fifth ad.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I feel like there was also actually no, Diurna was perfect. There were no changes to Diurna and they just like killed it.
Which was
Which
like
which is
that was
very
the
funny.
weirdest thing. Cause like, yeah, the two fights beforehand, you did fairly substantial nerfs. Razagath behind it, he was fairly substantial nerfs, but Diurna, perfect fight. Like
Yeah.
tuning wise, beautiful.
And I mean actually some of it is the blood DK tech on Diurna. Which if you don't know about it, in phase 2 of Mythic Diurna, there is a new tank mechanic, and it's basically that when she does Mortal Stone Claws on the tank, they get a bomb, and that bomb does split damage. So you have to like, in theory, like in the designer's head, right? In theory, you have to soak it, split it with
Mhm.
people, or your tank just dies, and you're not going to have enough B reses to just have your tank die and res them over again. Um, but Blood DK has AMZ. Sorry, not AMZ, AMS.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to remember. So I believe the DK1 actually prevents you getting the explosion at all if you pre-AMS it. You don't get the debuff that explodes. And you can
Gotcha.
do that on every other one. So it cuts the number of soaks that you have to do in half. And that actually might be why Diurna didn't need nerfs, is because
Yeah.
they had a blood DK come in and just like remove half of that mechanic. And if I don't think they could have gone double blood DK for other
Hmm.
reasons, but maybe they could have. And double blood DK means you literally delete the mechanic. That mechanic doesn't exist in phase.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that. I mean, always some AMS shenanigans with blood DK,
Yeah,
but that's funny. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean that yeah, tuning wise, I think the raid in general was most people like by the time we get there, we'll say probably fine fight, right? But I think from a world first perspective, I think they'll say like very not very good.
yeah.
Not very good.
I uh, I think that they will nerf phase one of Razageth fairly substantially, specifically the Hurricane winds,
The wins, yeah.
because of how toxic they are for your raid comp. It's not like you have a very limited number of spots that you can dedicate right now to people that cannot deal with the winds on their own. You basically
Yeah.
have to have like one evoker per person that cannot handle the winds on their own,
Right.
which for and you can't outgear that
So
unless you
it's just the pushback, yeah.
yeah, unless you could somehow reach the point that you are able to push the boss before the second hurricane wins and just have everybody like gateway the first one. You just can't outgear that check. So it's not like a late tier guilds are just gonna like push fast and fine. No,
Yeah.
they actually need to like do something there to make it so that if you reach it with three priests and two evokers, you aren't forced to bench a priest because they literally cannot survive phase.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's I think you're right, is that that'll be the first part that they should look at nerfing or would nerf, right? Is the wins. Because yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, that's what they were doing with at least when I was watching Liquid, their priest and paladin, their healer. So they had a priest, a disc, and a holy paladin. Like the two healing invokers would save them for like
Yeah,
alternating wins, basically, when they didn't have anything to actually make it through, which I thought was just hilarious.
yeah. It's
And
like
needing that tech, so
I mean, I guess there are a couple of other options. Like you can race change to Void Elf and use the Void Elf racial to deal with every third set of wins or something. And then
mhm.
there's the Gust potions that you can use on the early sets. So maybe it's something where they just like intend. It may be they actually intended even for the world first race to only go to like 4 wins, not 6, because they grow in
Yeah.
intensity over time. The later ones last longer, so you have
Mhm.
to like things that work on the first couple of sets, like the Gust potion that is basically a goblin jump in a bottle.
Mhm.
Um, don't work to deal with win number 6.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and that's maybe something that is another tuning miss. And honestly, like yeah, that is one thing that I am really, really not looking forward to reaching unless they hit it in some way. Because it's just gonna like we're gonna have like one comp that we can run,
Yeah.
and the other people, it's not even like we'll be able to bring in just the best players. We're gonna be forced by their class to bench them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and what I mean, I guess we'll see what they actually end up changing. I think the other thing too about this fight, I think this ends up being a good fight in the
Yeah,
grand scheme of things. Like, I think while it doesn't have a floor drop, you do change elevations.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So by that metric, should be a good fight. But no, I think by the time like once they go through maybe the next round of like, sub world 100, world 150 type nerfs that they typically do,
yeah.
um, I think it ends up being a fairly well balanced and good fight.
All right, so
Um,
here's my prediction. I think we get a phase one nerf in the next 2 weeks. Now that Blizzard is back in office after the holidays.
yeah, I would say that's probably appropriate. Yeah. Yeah. I would say, yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Next 2 weeks, see at least a nerf to phase one. I think the rest of the phases are probably
Yeah,
fine.
I don't think they touch
Um,
anything else until after like the Hall of Fame stuff, um,
yeah,
which is fairly typical. I think they touch
yeah,
phase one just because like past the top 10, comps are going to be destroyed by this boss, just entirely
exactly.
due to phase one.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. But no, I mean, it seemed like, I mean, ultimately from what I watched, it seemed like a really good fight.
It is a
Like a
very
lot
fun
of,
fight on heroic. Like
yeah,
this is significantly better than the jailer or Sylvanas.
yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not Denathrius, but let's not get
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
But no, I would agree. I mean, I would agree. We finally killed it on heroic I guess the week before Christmas.
yeah.
Um and
And
so yeah, that was good. Um
we almost
good
didn't
kill.
because I had internet issues
Oh no.
in the middle of raid,
Oh
which is
no.
just awful. Like that fight is not friendly at all. There are some fights you can like have a little bit of packet loss and be okay.
Yeah.
This is not one of them. If you get packet loss when wins are happening, you're screwed. You're done.
Yeah.
You're off the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. I guess maybe we can, yeah, well, maybe talk a little bit about progression so far. We can shift that way a little bit.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
that section next. No, yeah, so we killed it. I think we killed it 20 man on like a Monday. Since so like we just always do flex content like until it's dead. So like if we have enough people to show up, we will. So yeah, the Monday before Christmas, we killed it for the first time. With like we had 20 people on, and yeah, it's a fun fight. I will tell you, the phase two healing is unfun. Um, Primarily because it's a lot of movement, and like there's not strict positioning requirements, but there is like
yeah,
awareness of your character requirements, right? In
yeah.
phase two. Um, and so I'll tell you that's sort of the one phase that
Did you
like,
guys use the in out strat for Storm Surge?
what do you mean in out
All right, so
strat?
there's two different ways I've seen people do Storm Surge.
Hmm.
One is in out, where your negatives go in and your positives stay out
Uh,
on the outside ring and like find friends. Um,
mhm.
and then the other one is the left right, where your negatives go left and your positives go right. And the in out gives you a lot more actual uptime because it's way easier for people to like you have more space if you do that basically.
Mhm.
So your negatives go in and they're just immediately out of the way, and your positives can just circle the ring and find people to stand with.
Yeah, so we do in out, yeah, with
Yeah,
negatives underneath, and then we have two. I think we have two. We have two stack points for positives, and you
we
just
do too.
pick,
Yeah,
yeah, whichever one you want to do. Yeah, so yeah, we do the in out for that, which is fine. I've actually, so I'm sort of a little bit of a cheater in that I stand like directly in front of one of the positive stoke points, but between it and the center, so I just have to
yeah.
move forward and backwards, depending on like what color I get, and typically I'm not in the way of anyone. But yeah, no, we did that. Yeah, but progression for us, the only really tough part healing wise was in phase two. There's a really terrible overlap of it's like the things you have to interrupt drop
Yeah.
into push wins
Yep.
into a
Storm
second
Surge.
push or yeah, so yeah, into storm surge or something, or it's out of storm surge into that. It's some
Yeah.
weird combination of like lots of movement, and like that was a little bit of, we'd always lose one or two people there. That's
Yeah.
what slowed us down. But no, other than that, it's yeah, I mean, it's fine. There, I wish the only thing other than that, healing wise, the only visual issue I had was the breath in the second intermission, because it's not very apparent where it's going to hit. So in I guess in the second intermission, it'll target the boss will target one player, a player, and sort of breathe across the platform. But it's basically from where the boss starts to where that player is, and it's not always directly in the middle. So it's not like from a
Yeah.
left to right position. It could be like off center out to like only cut maybe like a portion
So
of the circle
the
off.
the boss, and this happens in the first intermission as well. The boss like sucks cloudy lightning stuff off of the ground
Mhm.
where the breath is going. The
So
effect is not
yeah,
super clear. So it's definitely something that like I got baited once where I saw it behind me and I was like, "Oh, I got to go forward." But forward was actually through the breath, and like I tank privileged my way through it, but I also baited two people that couldn't tank privilege their way through it because they just followed
yeah,
me, um, and they died. They died.
yeah. Yeah, no, and I guess the other thing too is it seems like I've seen that before, but at least in maybe that second intermission for me, like I expect the breath to come quicker, and I've been
Yeah.
baited in that. Like I'm like I see the sparklies go away, and then like I'm like, oh, do I move or not? And like okay, I'll try and get maybe a little bit close to heal somebody, and then I'll get like clipped right on the edge because I'm
Yeah.
like the breath should be here by now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I think other than that, I really enjoy the fight. Phase three is kind of underwhelming in that there's not a ton of damage going out like on the raid in phase three, at least on heroic.
Yeah.
Um,
There's also like so the magnet mechanic is cool. I like that they brought that back. The
yeah.
Zymox tank mechanic style thing. Um there's also that like Brewmaster and Blood DK can just delete the tank mechanic.
Okay.
Um where if you fully absorb the Thunderous Blast, it does 0 rate damage.
Okay. Gotcha. So we have a blood decay, which is probably what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if they do that, like the healers just don't have anything to have to, because that's supposed to be a bunch of the raid damage, right?
Yeah.
You have to fully absorb it. So ignore pain doesn't work because it's only 50% absorb.
Hmm.
And none of the other specs have a big absorb that they can use. It's just like Brewmaster can Celestial Brew, and you might need a cooldown for it. I don't really think you do if you have a fully stacked Celestial Brew on Heroic at least.
Yeah.
And then like on my DK, I just hit Vamp Blood and AMS, and they're both up for every one, and or for every one that I take alternate.
Yeah.
Um, and just delete the mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say yeah. That was sort of the I guess maybe the underwhelming part of the fight for me, but yeah. Overall, it's a fun fight. Yeah, you're right. Like the pull in phase three is interesting to sort of dodge the breath for like the first one from that overlap, and then um the plus and the minuses in phase two is cool. The interrupt ads is also cool. It's just I never know when I'm supposed to do it. Like I don't know if you've had this issue, but like with our raid, we have so many people that do so much like AoE disorient stuff that like
Yeah,
for a lot of the earlier pulls, I was like, okay, I got to get my ad. Like my ad is mine. But
yeah.
then like so I would spend time trying to click it and interrupt it, and it would be gone. So I'd miss time healing. So at a certain point, I was just like, someone else will take care of my ad for me. I will
What
just heal people.
the way we started was very much like everybody single target CCing their ads, but the way
Mhm.
it ended and the way we did it this week on Reclear was a lot of just like everybody is hitting all their mass AoE CCs, and then I just kind of run around and kick anything that got left behind.
Makes sense.
Ring of Peace, by the way, monk tip. Ring of Peace is insane for this. You drop Ring of Peace and people stand in it. Like you can fit like 4 people in it, and it just removes their thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might also remove the second one. It depends on where it jumps. If it jumps into the ring, then it's gone, and you just did like 8 kicks. If it jumps out of the ring, then you have a second kick too. But
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah. Ring is amazing on that fight for that stuff. Yeah, and I mean, after the first kill, we actually one shot it on reclear. So like we did. So we've still been clearing normal and heroic. So like last week, the last 2 weeks, we've done normal and heroic on Tuesdays, and the week before, so last actually both weeks, we basically did full mythic or sorry, full heroic, full normal, and like one mythic boss, basically, I think.
Yeah,
All on Tuesday, all within one raid day. So in 4 hours, basically, which was like I think really good. I think I'm hoping we drop normal this week coming up, and it's just a heroic thing. The our issue now is like we are down to like 4 people who don't have foresight.
mm-hmm.
Um, and two of those people, well, one of those people is me. Another person's another healer. And I think
Healers don't need gear. It's fine.
yeah, okay.
Um,
Um, yeah,
Catalyst
like one's a
is
reroll, so
in 3 weeks. Catalyst is in 3 weeks. It's a
3
ways
weeks,
away
yeah.
still.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we'll see how we do in heroic if we can finish off like the last just checking the sheet. I think we have like 4 people who need at least 2 pieces. Um, and
Yeah,
so
we're actually a little bit
we'll
worse
see.
off than that because of holiday stuff. We had 3 people that missed 2 weeks of raid for
Oh
Christmas
jeez.
plus New Year's.
Hmm.
And then another couple people that missed the week of Christmas. And so I think we have like 6 people that don't have Forset.
Oh wow.
Um, it was really on the like second week of raid. we were giving dreadful tokens to my co-tank to just roll for tertiaries.
That's hilarious.
Because we got like we killed a boss. We got 3 dreadful token drops. Both of our warlocks were on the holiday vacation.
Oh no.
And so our options for dreadful tokens are me and my co-tank.
Yeah.
So we just like gave him one to roll for tertiaries on. It felt really bad.
That sucks.
But then also like now that people are back, we're going to be able to send them like so they should catch up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get somewhat lucky with venerated tokens in particular are a real bottleneck for us right now. Like I feel like every raid team has like one token type that they just haven't gotten a lot of, and for us it's venerated. Our
Is that the
shamans,
priest
paladins,
one?
priests, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's actually ours too. The worst part is our Zenith token is like overloaded. So like
Mm-hmm.
for us, that's like the most. Let me just double check. I think that's the most players we have is on Zenith, which is just like just sucks.
Ours is definitely Mystic because Mystic is Druid Hunter, and that by
Oh,
itself
okay.
there is pretty much like a quarter of our roster. And then did Evoker end up on Mystic? Or did they end up on
uh,
Zenith?
Invoker Zenith, because Invoker's with Monk,
Yeah,
and
and
I
Monk
forget
is
who else is
Zenith.
on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah, so that's the biggest issue that we have right now. Is just is yeah, we just don't get a lot. Like we don't get a lot of. It's funny, we don't get a lot of venerated either, but we only have 4 players on that token.
Yeah,
But like we don't get enough Zenith in that. Like yeah, I'm still like me and one of the other preservation evokers is like without 4 set, which sucks because we just had someone reroll to devastation evoker and like they're gonna gobble up at least a couple slots this week. So might
yeah,
be another week or two before I get 4 set, which kind of
yeah.
sucks. But
I have 4 set purely because of the 2 Warlocks being out of town.
yeah,
Like if they hadn't been, I would still be rocking probably 2 set just because we got a lot of the tokens. But you know, because nobody else could use the tokens, they went to me. So
nice, nice,
um,
nice.
yeah. So that's heroic. How about mythic? I think we're both at the same point. We've both killed the first 2, which is Aranog. Very straightforward. I think we probably both knocked that out the first week.
Yeah, first week, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Primal Council. We actually just like sent 5 pulls or something into Primal Council the first week with like
Yeah.
not really having a plan or healing CDs or anything for it. Just like, and we have 20 minutes left in raid. We're gonna like clear the trash to the next boss and just like send it. And maybe we YOLO into a kill. We didn't, but you know, then
Yeah.
we came back next week and we killed it in 2 pulls. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, we took a little bit longer, but yeah, we've gotten both Council and Aeronog down, and now it's pretty much I think one shots on both of them for
yeah,
now. And then we pulled is it how what's the next Terros?
Terros. Yeah,
Yeah, Terros next. We put our first pulls into to that boss on Thursday this week. And we did not kill it. I think we had like probably 3 or 4 sub 5% wipes. I was out, so I didn't raid Thursday. I had family stuff. I was away. But no, they got it. I think a handful of sub, 10% pulls, didn't kill it. So hopefully we get it this week with a little bit extra gear.
yeah,
But yeah, that's still that's a tough boss.
yeah.
At least from what I watched in like the
It's
watching the logs,
very
stuff like that.
precise. Um, so like I guess I watched some of the weekday team in our guild do their progression on
Mhm.
it, and they had some heartbreaking sub 1% wipes.
Oh
Um,
jeez.
it was so close. Um, so we started on it on Friday. We could only have like 6 pulls on, because we
Mhm.
did all of our heroic week.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a very precise boss, in particular the dust, the way that we do dust. So there's a dance, right? You do your rock blast, then everybody moves out of the aftermath. You break all of the spikes at once with a healer cooldown.
Mhm.
Then everybody stacks back up to bait the slam. You move out of that. You bait the falling rocks. You move away from that. So you go like slam, move right, rocks move left, dust happens like immediately, and 18 people are stacked to
Yeah.
immediately clear it. And so you clear and you almost just like keep moving left. It's almost you almost don't stop. And if you do,
Gotcha.
you get hit by rocks and you die. And
Nice.
and I mean it's not like that severe. There's a little bit of wiggle room. It's definitely something where you cannot greed a cast there at all. Like when you're doing the dust thing, you go, you do dust, and you move. Like it does
Yeah.
not matter how important that cast is, you will die. So then you move out, and then two other people are in the back, and they clear after everybody else. Because like
Gotcha.
there's this breakpoint. There's two breakpoints on the dust stuff. One is for it literally just like one shotting the raid.
Hmm.
And that is for our gear level. If you did all 20 at the same time, it would just kill some people. Um, and then there's another breakpoint that happens at like 10 players, where you like barely need a healing CD for it, or it's like
Gotcha.
10 players lets you get hit by something and then survive the dust. But doing it with 10 players is just like massively more complicated because you go straight from that dust into another rock blast like 4 or 5 seconds later.
Gotcha.
So you don't have time really to like have people get hit, break 10, and then like heal people up and then do it again. Like you just there's a timing constraint there. So we're doing the 18 clear. Um
Okay.
and it's a real damage. Terros is another real damage check. This is just
Yeah.
like a big old single target damage check. I'm going to be actually going after this podcast and doing a bunch of sims to figure out like where I spend valor on my DK. I got a weapon that I can upgrade. I don't know if it's worth me dumping 3,000 valor into this weapon, but it
Gotcha.
might be. That might be my biggest upgrade. Um, and then I got to figure out like spend a spark on a crafted item that is like going to be a small upgrade, which then means it's going to be another, 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks until I could craft a weapon.
Right. Yeah.
But then like Primal Council drops a good two-handed weapon. So do I really need to craft a weapon? Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
need
You
to
can.
craft a weapon.
Yeah. The spark. I mean, yeah. I think we'll talk about sparks in a bit, but yeah, no, those are always the I think the tough decisions too. Um, yeah, I think our problem too is like I do our healing CDs, so I did our healing CDs off of like other people's logs with similar
Yeah.
comps. And so like I'm assuming like one of the things that they were talking about after the raid was like we probably should have moved stuff around, and I was like, yeah, guys, you probably should have. Come on, buds. Um, because typically we'll do that. Like we'll talk like in the raid,
Our
we'll talk
healers are
about
super good
things.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Ours are kind of quiet. We'll say
Yeah.
in terms of like
Well,
that. So
I think if we didn't have our healing officer there, there's like two possibilities. Either they would talk about it and then not move anything,
yeah.
or they would talk about it and move it way too much and like change everything every pull.
Right. Yeah.
And like our healing officer is like the linchpin that keeps everything coordinated and make sure that like yeah, maybe we actually just try that one again and like people do better about not standing in swirlies, and we see how that goes. We give it a couple more pulls before we completely healing cool.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely been the toughest part I'll say for me. This is like learning because we run two preservation evokers. So like learning their cooldowns has been like not tough, but like it adds a different dimension. Like going back to this Razageth real quick, real briefly, is like for like two of the pushback wins, we just use a dream flight to heal people.
Yeah.
Like so like not and that's like an extremely strong cooldown that like I hadn't realized. So yeah, I mean it's been interesting to learn their cooldowns, I'll say. Um because like rewind is useless against dot damage, you want it for big hits. So it's like
Right. It's kind of a
figuring out like
revival that has the like
yeah.
movement thing packed onto it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, very revival like in terms of that. So yeah, I mean, it's that's been an interesting part of it. But no, our I think our Terra stuff we'll clean up. I'll be in this week. Hopefully that helps. We won't have somebody's all playing their second spec. One of our shamans stepped up um to at least heal for the night. So yeah,
Yeah, we
we'll
actually were doing it without a disc priest on Friday. Uh,
oh really?
yeah, our disc priest was out of town. They're back today. They're doing
Nice.
keys right now. Last I saw, they were in an hour plus long life pool. It's 20. which is quite sounds like quite an adventure. Um,
I hate that. I hate that
yeah, I'm
so
sure they
much.
will too by the end of it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so we had a druid step up and heal. So
Not too bad. Not too bad. Um, well, cool. Yeah, I think we're probably very clear. So yeah, hopefully you get some solid pulls in tonight.
yeah,
Get it down
fingers
this
crossed.
week.
So what I've heard is the damage check is like Terros is a real damage check.
Hmm.
And so it's worth putting in. It feels actually it is nice having this big damage check that is actually a real damage check, and it's something for us to work on, optimize around, and that's actually kind of fun. There's no super complicated things. Fight's fairly
Yeah.
straightforward. We actually not only on Terrace but for the whole raid we have virtually no assignment week auras,
Yeah.
like, and that's actually really nice. We by the time we reach some of these later mythic fights, we might grab a couple, but on heroic we have like Razageth positive negative charge is like the only one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think we use one for kicks on council, but like that's just so people like we have
yeah,
somebody assigned to do
if we
it.
if we
So
just YOLO kicks, just YOLO the kicks because it's not the casts don't hit nearly as hard as like the prototype Pantheon kicks did.
yeah,
Where like the
that's true.
prototype Pantheon kicks, if one of those went off, somebody was probably dead.
Yeah,
Um, so these are more way more forgiving.
true. That is true. Um, well, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's where we're at progression wise. So, not too bad. It's been fun so far. I'll say it's a good
Had
first
a good
raid.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the I will tell you the only downside. I don't know if I mentioned this the last time we talked, but the giving out loot is not as much fun as like I like master loot in that nothing ever really goes to waste, at least that we've seen. But like the 5 or so minutes between boss fights to like hand out loot is just it's annoying.
yeah.
Um,
So what we started doing is we have our DP a couple of our DPS go tank spec in between
okay.
bosses, and they tank trash while we figure out loot. But what we actually might start doing for our heroic is just not give out any of the heroic loot until break. Like we break 2 hours in, so we
Yeah.
have to like break a little bit early to make sure that we actually have time to pass out the loot before the timer expires.
Hmm.
But just like not stop to give it out, just like blast, for 2 hours, then give out a bunch of loot, then blast for 2 hours and give.
Yeah, that's what we ended up doing, particularly like in normal and then like heroic for this week. I think the only thing we did this week after each boss was non-tier pieces.
Yeah,
Um, and so actually no, we didn't. No, we kept everything this week. So yeah, so we did basically like 3 bosses, hand out loot, 3 bosses, hand out loot. It sort of didn't wait the
yeah,
full 2 hours, but did it like every like 45 minutes to an hour.
yeah,
And that like as a player who like I have no input on loot, so like that time for me is literally like just sitting there, like
yeah,
typing in my little note into RC Loot Council, like pressing like
yeah,
whatever main spec, whatever I need to do. And then like I go AFK, but I don't know if I can go AFK because like the way to work, like you have to like open trade with like
yeah,
whoever has all the loot and get the loot. It's just I wish it was two things. I wish it was true master looter and that they could just give you items, which would be
yeah.
so much easier.
Well,
Um,
that would also prevent. There's a little bit of a gotcha. Um, so we killed heroic Razageth this week, and we had somebody that was immediately leaving to go take their brother to the air.
mhm.
And so they left. They didn't roll on loot, um, and I didn't realize it.
Okay.
So not all of the loot ended up in my box. Some
Oh
of it
no.
ended up in my mailbox, and that is how we had a tier token end up in my mailbox that is now bound to my DK. They cannot use it.
Oh no. Oh no.
Thankfully, it wasn't one that was going to like give somebody 4 Ps. It was going to somebody to just like be an eye level upgrade over their current one. Like that
Yeah.
still feels bad because it was like a 13 eye level upgrade, right? You won't that feels bad, but it isn't as bad as it could have been, and it's an important lesson for anybody listening. Uh, make
Yes.
sure the loot actually ends up in your bag before you leave the instance. Because if
Yeah.
it goes to the
Yep.
mail, now soulbound.
Yeah, we had issues too this week. Well, speaking of this, like bugs like or weird things like that, is like a bunch of our raiders use LVUI and like we also use
Yeah,
RC loop council. And so like some interaction of like auto passing didn't clear the LVY like rolling thing.
you gotta
As
slash reload.
exactly. So like that was there and and yeah, so the funny thing is that so like some people were like, so we triggered like someone would trigger an RC loop council thing, our master would, and then people would like do all their fill out things, and like as we're waiting, some people would reload their UI, which would throw back up the RC loop council window of like rolling on items, and so you have to fill that all the way back out, or like it like erased your answers or something weird. So yeah, it
Oh
was
man.
it was a fun time.
Yeah, I saw a post
Fun
about
time for
that
that.
from the LVI Discord. That's like, yeah, we're aware of this like bug for now. Just like reload UI
Yeah,
after the auto pass happens. Just reload UI and then do your loop.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, um, but no, it's been an experience. It's been a kind of not too bad in terms of like the raid so far. Haven't had any sort of terrible fights that I've absolutely hated just yet,
Yeah.
but
Well, we
we'll see
get
on
to Ice
Mythic.
Spider after Terros, right? And then
That's true.
that's one where we're gonna find out how bad that is to actually do on.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
That is the one that concerns me.
Yeah, it's well that one or I mean Thea I think is also
Oh,
probably gonna be one
actually,
that I'm gonna get annoyed at.
I
So
died on Dethea this week. In we did a sale run. I died on Dethea to the exact overlap that I complained about during from
oh
V0
really?
testing, where like the tank knock happened and then the ad knock happened, and I was just like, it was actually even worse than that. Like the tank knock happened, and I knew the ad knock was going to be coming, so I got knocked towards the ad, but then I ended up like landing inside the ad as it was exploding, and it sent me off
Jeez.
sideways,
Yeah.
and I went off the platform.
God. Oh no. Oh no.
So I'm
Not
just
like
like,
that.
and I can't. So as you go to like 3 or 4 stacks on your, depending on how fast the platform's. So I I save my Death's Advance charges to use on the third and fourth.
Right.
So I have to like, I think it works for me to like blow Death's Advance on the first one that overlaps with the ad, and then still have it for 3 and 4 as long as I don't use it on 2.
Yeah.
But it just is a huge feels bad. Just like, oops, I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, need a
And you
res,
can't
yeah.
even like that overlaps. You can't do the thing that you can do with a lot of the knocks, which is get knocked into a tornado, which stops your momentum.
Mhm.
It does damage, but it stops your momentum. And that is way better than dying.
Yeah.
Uh, so like worst case on, I was like worst case on 3 and 4, I like knock myself into a tornado, and then I'll live. I might purg, but I'll live.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that fight I think is gonna be I think it's just gonna be it's gonna be annoying with the knockbacks and like charging up the ads with like the marks or whatever. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully that's all figured out for us when we get there. So
yeah.
um
That's one where we might have a week or be like,
yeah,
you dunk, you don't dunk. Okay, now you dunk. Like at very least, like it's got the Painsmith trap thing where you need to like stagger your dunks probably so that you don't go to 4 stacks when it goes out.
exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
missed all of Dethea progression from, so I have no idea what it actually looks like. I just know it
Yeah,
got
it's just like
nerfed.
yeah, it's just like charging up things. So um so cool. Well yeah, maybe I guess we can sort of shift to I guess some other things that happened over the past weeks. There wasn't much. But we can talk a little bit about that and then we can sort of hit the main topic, which is sort of the look forward to 2023. Um so yeah, so I think real quick, so Method did interview Morgan Day, associate game director Morgan Day. Love Morgan so much. Did ask him a bunch of questions pre-raid. So this was sort of something that was I think they did it pre-raid. It was released during their the Method Race for World First stuff. Um and a couple of interesting questions, not too much, but some questions around like, you know, because this was pre-raid, they asked a little bit about like the BOEs, the issue with BOEs, which I don't think we ever mentioned, but the fact that they did previously they were going to just have BOEs drop from lieutenants, And those BOEs, at least the mythic version of those BOEs, would be BOP for the first couple weeks, meaning like you couldn't sell mythic BOEs or you couldn't sort of sell the BOs from the lieutenants. They reverted that. So now, there's BOEs dropping from trash and they're not
Yeah.
BOE from mythic, I think. So they couldn't get that to work tech wise. So that was sort of one thing they touched on. You mentioned that. Um, ask a little bit about how rare the rare raid drops are, which we got a ton of those primalist trinkets. I don't know about you, but like,
We got a mythic one this week.
yeah, we've
That
gotten a
was
bunch
cool.
in heroic, and I think we have one mythic one also. But yeah, that they don't seem that rare, I'll say.
Yeah.
Um,
And Morgan Day's comment on it was basically, we won't tell you the drop rate, but I will tell you that it's not the like 1% mounts kind of drop
yeah,
rate. They're way higher than that. Um,
yeah.
so yeah. Also on the BOE thing, part of the reason for like doing this, like I think they had technical reasons for it for this tier. Like they just couldn't get
Hmm.
it implemented in time with the like weekly lockout on killing the lieutenants and basically them being literal mini bosses. Um,
Right.
I would much rather still have the lieutenants with like the gear. You get some Bob or BOE items rather than the trash farm thing. Like I guess, and maybe that's
I
just
hate
to like
trash.
maybe there's a group of people out there that really likes BOE trash farms, and you know what? I guess I'm okay with that existing, but I
Hmm.
would prefer having lieutenant mobs that just are like, yeah, we know we kill this. As if we killed this thing, we don't. There's no incentive for us to go like scour trash in the instance and hope to get a couple more mythic BOEs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm definitely, yeah, I'm not a fan of trash. We've already started our trash skipping, so we're getting very good at the first wing of trash skips, and then we'll probably continue to get a little bit better everywhere else. So, yeah, no, I think yeah, I think I'm fine with the fact that like, yeah, if everything was on a lieutenant, it'd make it a little bit easier. Um, so yeah, and then I think that the only other, I guess, couple other quick just highlight points is like they ask Morgan about like ever having like a fully untested raid or like how reliant are you on community testing, and like his point is basically like they'll never fully do something fully untested. Like they think the idea is like they want to make sure that your player experience is good, and so they want to make sure that like yeah, like when we walk into a raid, maybe not the world first raiders, but like when we as sort of mid-tier raiders or just general people walk into a raid, it's a good experience, right?
Yeah,
And so you can't do that without some testing, at least from the community at large, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, meanwhile, the Thea still exists.
yeah, well, yeah,
I
exactly,
mean, it's one of those things
exactly.
where like most of the time it's fine, but then like 10% of the time or 5% of the time, it just like you just die, and it
Yeah,
feels really, it's just unpleasant.
yeah,
And there's always things like
exactly.
you can play super conservatively and play around it. Like I was talking about, like using Death Advance on that one to make sure the overlap doesn't kill me. But not every
Hmm.
tank can do that.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes it, yeah, yeah. They need that sort of testing to see those things, even if you can see all the numbers and like a spreadsheet. There's just
Yeah,
something about the fight playing out that you kind of need to see. Um, They also asked about Faded. So that was the season 4 mechanic from Shadowlands. From a developer perspective, they really like it, at least according to Morgan. And so, we'll probably see something similar at the end of this expansion, which I'm fine. I think I enjoyed season 4. It was just fun to sort of, mess around. I think we talked about some of the issues with like the reprogression side of things, but
yeah,
generally once you got into it, once they unlocked like all 3 raids at the same time, I think it was
yeah.
fine.
I think the raid rotation was probably the single biggest issue, and then the faded
Mhm.
powers honestly were just
Balanced.
not it. Like,
Yeah.
just like don't.
Yeah.
Actually, okay. I think Vault of the Incarnates would be perfectly fine with faded
I
because
would actually
a
agree.
lot of the bosses don't have the kind of like insanely tight dances that we saw in Sepulcher in particular, where
Mhm.
like you're always one step away from the next important mechanical overlap and you have to handle that. And then adding faded powers, it was just like just not fun. It overloaded
Yeah,
the
too
fights.
much.
And I don't think the fights involved with the incarnates are like that. I think that they have more breathing room so that you could fit the faded powers in there and it would not be overloading the fights.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So we'll probably see faded or a faded like mechanic for the final season here in this raid, which will be fun, or this sorry expansion, which will be cool. Somebody asked about they asked about healer trinkets. So will healer trinkets ever become more desirable?
Tank
Which
trinkets, I think,
I
is the same answer.
yeah, which I think is just funny in that like I don't know about I mean I know that tank you guys sort of I think trend more towards like damage focused trinkets like
Yeah,
healers again our trinkets are generally going to be more focused on like just throughput. The problem is that most healer specific trinkets are just not good. Like if they did a lot of throughput, I think we'd use them a lot more often. But like in many cases, they're just like, what was the trinket from? I don't know if it was from Sepulcher or from Sanctum, but it was like the Guardians or sorry, the Lion's Roar. It put like a shield down, like
yeah,
an AMS shield. It was like a 10-minute cooldown that were reduced when you did holy damage. It was like
yeah,
only one healer does holy damage. Well, I guess two healers do holy damage, but it's like also it's not good. Like the
yeah,
numbers are not good.
yeah,
And so I think that's it's just a funny question in that like and Morgan's answer I think is slightly off in that I think if just trinkets were better and did more like more or did like more interesting things, I think you'd see a lot more healers trend towards them. I think the Broodkeeper trinket, very much I think a healer specific trinket from Diurna is a very good trinket this expansion.
yeah.
I think that's
But that's
a really
not
good
like, I
trinket.
mean, it is a throughput trinket, but it's also just like a versatility buff.
Yeah.
So it's just like if it didn't have the healing, it would still be a good trinket. It wouldn't be as good. It wouldn't be better than a lot of the other options. But if they turned all that healing into just straight versatility, it would be good.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think he's actually super off on the throughput because like with tank trinkets, they run into a similar issue where like if you just buff the throughput on the trinket, then obviously the trinket is good.
Mhm.
For a lot of them, some of them are unredeemable. Some of them are
Okay.
unredeemable, like that stupid trinket from Halls of Atonement.
Yeah.
Um, but what you can run into then is a trinket that basically becomes mandatory and you can't do your job without trinket. And that's something that I think they try to avoid. Um,
Right.
and if you, so for example, if you had just like really, really high powered healer trinkets, right, with a lot of throughput, and you have a fight where it's like requires 4.5 healers, one of those fights where like you need four for sure. Five is kind of overkill. They don't do very much healing, but it's still kind of important. Like four is too
Right.
little, five is too much. Um, if you slap eight like high powered throughput trinkets on your four healers, and that lets you skip the fifth healer,
Mhm.
that that could work. But then also, if you don't have the eight throughput trinkets to put on, then you're forced to play five healers, and that can make the fight a lot harder.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I think yeah, I mean it's definitely a balance, but I think I don't know. Like you the problem is like any trinket for at least that a healer is going to equip is generally going to drive some sort of throughput and in the past it's been stat sticks that have been the best, like the
Yeah,
uninteresting ones.
yeah,
Right? And so like I think to make an interesting healer trinket you have to give it some sort of healing and you know or some sort of interesting mechanic like void like was it void stone was
yeah,
the
yeah.
crucible of storms trinket that like
Or feather from that was from Castle Nathria, right? The feather trinket that like put an absorb on somebody that had the like janky tech where like it would fully absorb a hit no matter how large it was.
I think yeah, I forget. Yeah, I think there was something like that. Yeah. I always remember Voidstone as like the good bad trinket in that it absorbed healing, but then also prevented damage, the shield. And so
Yeah,
you'd have to time it to like hit just as a hit was coming, so you didn't absorb too much of the healing off of it by
yeah.
healing the person. So yeah, I mean, or sorry, too much to absorb off of. So yeah, I mean, I think they can make interesting healer trinkets. It's just
The
they're just
unused
tough.
like
It's hard.
external trinkets are definitely
Yeah,
way more fun and interesting. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's and then there's a couple other questions in the interview, but I think those were like the big hitters from Morgan. So
yeah.
um it was cool. It was a good little interview. Sort of that method ended up doing. Um I guess next up in terms of week's interview, we'll say the last 2 weeks is Mike Ybarra of Blizzard President. I think that's his title. Anyway, the leader of Blizzard now, Mike Ybarra, posted his like end of year sort of wrap up, talking about really all of the Blizzard franchises. So like the Diablo franchises, Overwatch, World of Warcraft, of course, or Warcraft, we'll say, of course. Um, I think the biggest thing is Diablo 4's got a release date. No, we're not a Diablo podcast, but
Yeah.
June 6th.
Yeah.
This summer, we'll get to play Diablo 4, which I'm excited about. A huge fan of Diablo. Um, Goes through a bunch of different changes they made to the overall team, which is interesting. I think the biggest one that impacts us is Holly Longdale is now the executive producer of World of Warcraft. So overall, all of the World of Warcraft franchises, both classic and retail, which I think we talked about this maybe when we talked about the trading posts that dropped on PTR. But I think Holly will be. I don't know. I'm excited about her influence on WoW in general.
Yeah.
Coming from her background, like the EQ next stuff and yeah, but he did, Mike goes through like a huge sort of just wrap up of all the Blizzard stuff, all the fun stuff they're doing. But yeah, it's cool. Yeah, the I think the Diablo thing is big, and then yeah, Holly taking over as a executive producer, which I think is fun. So good for Z game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then the final sort of wrap up before we talk about the next sort of couple months in content is the third spark of Ingenuity is available this week. So if you are not familiar, these sparks of Ingenuity, they are items that allow you to craft basically high level crafted items. I'll say they're used in high level crafted items. And so you will only get a limited number of these, which means you can only make a limited number of crafted items. And you got your third one this week. Generally speaking, it's most items take one of these. Really, it's only two-handed weapons. So any
It's
sort of two-handed
two-handed
weapon will take
weapons
two.
that take two to kind of balance them with the one hand like dual wielding
Offhand, kind
option.
of. Yeah.
So you're
Hmm.
not punished for dual wielding. Yeah. So yeah, that's the third spark is out, and this is the first one that you can spend really on something that's not an embellished item.
Hmm.
Your first two sparks really should go towards embellished items, and I think one that virtually everybody went for is the elemental lariat, the necklace, which is a very good default option because no matter what, it's just a huge amount of stats. So like, it can't be that bad. And for
Hmm.
Brewmaster, for example, our sims were kind of in a wonky state at the point where people were kind of making decisions um, about their embellishments. So Lariat was just like, this is just good. I know it's going to be good. It might not be the best in the long term, but it is a good start. Um,
Yep.
I actually redid Sims this morning to figure out what the actual best embellishment setups are for Brewmaster. And it's currently looking like the slimy expulsion boots plus
Oh,
your fang adornment on the weapon, which is
gotcha.
nice actually because getting a high eye level weapon is also just like a huge upgrade. If you
Hmm.
have the concentrated primal infusion, which comes from either doing 10 keys that are 16 or above, you don't need to dime them. You get one from that. So if you've been grinding keys, you can get a couple of 418s from that. Also drops from Mythic Raid,
Gotcha.
and so that's kind of the like best brewmaster setup now. And then the third one, this is an advantage of being a class that can dual wield. You could just spend an individual one on like a high eye level weapon, and that's really your best bet for your third one, unless you got a high eye level weapon. That's just like the biggest upgrade that you can get in general is just like upgrading a weapon. So being able to go like, okay, I'm gonna upgrade one weapon this weekend and one weapon next week or in 2 weeks is like really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you were saying earlier, like for Mistweaver, it's like Elemental Lariat is the go-to.
Yeah. I mean, Elemental Lariat is hands down the biggest increase you can do, or you can make sort of with your spark. So that'll be sort of a locked in one. And then from there, it's really just filling in gaps in your gear, right? Like you basically would craft whatever your weakest slot is beyond that, or whatever slot you're not going to replace,
Yeah,
so quickly in terms of whatever content you're doing. Because it doesn't really matter. Like I guess you're looking at trinkets like Alkstone probably is a
do those
solid
count?
second. Oh, sorry.
Does that count for embellishment? I guess that's a spark item
Oh,
anyway, so it doesn't
it's a
matter.
spark item, yeah. So more
Yeah,
for your spark usage, yeah.
yeah.
But in terms of like actually, sorry, in terms of the embellishments, it's basically elemental lariat and then healing darts. You can do potion absorption inhibitor, which increases the duration of potions by 50%, but only if you are doing something very specific with our potion of chilled clarity. the potion of chilled clarity is like the innervate potion. It
Right.
basically, makes your cast cost 100% less mana, but increases your cast time. You can sort of get around that as a Mistweaver with using Soothing Mist. It
Gotcha.
doesn't
Oh,
Vivify
that's
still insta
fun.
cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're only ever going to do potion absorption emitter if you're essentially gaming Soothing Mist into like Vivify spam. Right, you're
Yeah.
going to spam the spell. It's not
Yeah.
healing darts. I think a little bit more consistent and requires less potion setup. We'll say.
Yeah.
Um,
There's also some cursed tech with Potion 1. You can
okay.
put it on the weapon. Okay.
Okay.
You can swap weapons in combat.
Okay. Oh no.
You can pop your potion with the potion absorption inhibitor, then swap your weapon, and
It keeps
have
the potion duration.
it keeps the potion duration.
Ooh, that's
This
dirty.
is this has been reported. It hopefully will
Okay.
be fixed. I honestly expect the fix to be like if you remove your potion absorption inhibitor, it just like removes all potions from you,
Yeah.
which is like
Yeah.
fair, fair. I honestly would not be mad if they did that.
No.
Um, because that is like some really cursed stuff. Um, and also right now you are limited by sparks for that, so like you would be investing in a third embellished item basically, but you're only able to equip two at once, and I don't know that it is actually correct for anybody to do that.
Yeah.
The only thing that it might make sense is for like a healer to have both the potion inhibitor and also healing darts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Which
everybody
is. Oh, sorry.
everybody else I feel like is just going to gain more from like the third high level craft,
Hmm.
and maybe even healers would just gain more from a third high level craft.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not playing into it, it's just easier to do another third item that's just high item level versus like doing something like this because gaming it just really only works under that potion of chilled clarity situation. Like even
Yeah,
if you were just to pop the potion and not game it with Vivify, it's healing darts are generally going to end up being better. So
yeah,
um
yeah. On the Windwalker side, there's some interesting tech as well. I don't know if you've heard about the situation with Flaring Cowl, which is
I have not.
so for plate and leatherwares. I don't know about cloth or mail. There
Okay.
are embellishments that can do fire damage. And that may not seem that important, but then there's the ring off of Aranog, Seal of Diurna's Chosen, and the ring off of Diurna, Seal of Filial Duty,
Hmm.
that both have bonus effects that are triggered by dealing fire damage. So if your spec doesn't have a built-in way to do fire damage, these embellishments give you a way to do that. So for Windwalker, actually, Flaring Cowl is like your best in slot if you have the Aerodog ring. It does fire damage when you do.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And that's the same way for like DKs don't have fire damage. But one of their best, like just straight up one of the best items for them is the belt that does frost fire damage, which also counts for the
Hmm.
ring. Um, at least for Blood DK, that's just like one of the best items. And then also happens to enable the Aerodog ring.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I
So
did. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I was just reading that the flaring cloud. That's it. Yeah, because I was wondering about those rings and that. Like, there are certain classes that just can't do fire damage. So I was like,
right.
what is the?
So any
They get around
leather
that.
or plate wearer can put one of those on, and it is generally like a DPS game to do that if you get the ring. Like I know
Yeah.
our feral druid has flaring cowl, and they're like, I'm not like if I get the Aranog ring, I will take off more set basically to put on flaring cowl and the ring. I don't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Like I think it's because they have some low eye level tier, but it's like also feral tier, maybe not the best. Um,
It's a feral, so definitely not the best.
damn.
Sorry.
Um,
Sorry.
but yeah, it's so that's just something to be aware of. Like there's these interactions between the crafted items and the rings.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if they did it on purpose. I guess it makes sense. Yeah.
Brewmaster, for the record, does not need Flaring Cowl. Flaring Cowl is not one of your top choices. It is fine. If you're a Windwalker and you have it crafted for that and you wear it as Brewmaster, you're like, you're not throwing. None of the embellishments are that powerful.
Gotcha.
Um, but we have Breath of Fire that just
Yeah, so you already have
triggers the
voice
ring
ring.
for
Yeah.
us. Like we don't need anything extra.
Gotcha. 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 Nice. Nice. Um, yeah, so I mean that's sort of I guess we so I have just gotten my third spark. So I've only crafted 2 pieces so far. So I need to
Yeah, as I
think
mentioned
about
earlier,
where.
I'm after this podcast, I'm going and figuring out what I'm doing with my third. If it's worth it for me
Yeah.
to like actually go and get one crafted for Terros tonight to make sure that like just that every little bit, right? Because if I can gain 800 DPS or like upgrading stuff with Valor and getting a crafted item, it's a lot. Like
Yeah.
that's a lot. And if everybody does that, you know, across 20 people, right? You're looking at 16k DPS. It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's the difference between a 1% wipe and a kill.
Yeah, which is yeah, we've had people have it's definitely a boss where you'll see a bunch of like sub like I said, we had probably like 4 or 5 attempts sub 5%, and then one sub 1%. So it's a tight check. For sure. Um so cool. So yeah, so I think then, the only other I guess final thing we have for today, the big topic, is Blizzard really Holly put out a post and then Blizzard put out a couple of tweets with some graphics on the sort of the upcoming year, we'll say, of Warcraft, which I think is I don't remember them ever doing anything like this before. So I think
This is
this is sort of
new. Yeah.
it's a brand new thing. But they basically put out a post of like, here is what we're planning to do over the next year with World of Warcraft. And it's not a bunch of specifics. And I think they sort of caveat in that like this is our plan. Things potentially change with these plans. But they put out a graphic and sort of an overview of like the 6 upcoming content patches for World of Warcraft, which is is super cool that they did this. I'll say.
Yeah. So
uh,
there's a couple like before we even get into the specifics of it. One thing I want to highlight is we're seeing the return of like point 0.7 patches. We had a
mhm,
9.2.7 that was the like cross realm auction house stuff
mhm.
basically. Um, but this is like every major patch is going to have 2 minor patches from looking at this, and that's a pretty
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a combination of like just a general updates like of current systems or like current items, right? And then also a small amount of like story progression, right?
Yeah.
Of like new content there. So yeah, so I mean they sort of lay this all out, give us rough timelines of when things will come in, and then sort of talk about what's going to be inside of these. So yeah, so if we kind of go through this a little bit, you can take a look at winter. The 10.0.5 patch comes out sometime this winter, so probably January February timeframe, and that's really like the trading post is the big thing coming from that. They talk a little bit about Primalist tomorrow, which I believe is
That's some world content.
like new world content. Uh, which is that the tomorrow world? That's like the hourglass area
That's
in
the hourglass
Valdrakken.
area. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In Thaldraszus, there's the hourglass the
North Eldrassus.
area that you go into as part of like main campaign, if I can talk. That currently has like nothing in it. It's got the like trial of whatever world event in there
And a
that
world quest sometimes.
and a world quest sometimes. Um, but this is gonna have like actual content there. We don't know any details of it yet. We do know Trading Post uh, is already on PTR. That's the one that we know details about. And then
Mhm.
the other one, I actually think this next one's the biggest addition from it. Not the other two.
Oh, okay.
White and gray items becoming transmoggable.
It's dumb.
Like you're gonna
Transmog ruined the game.
people are gonna be walking around like I cannot wait for somebody to show up to parade in a tuxedo.
I'm just like, if it's me, I'm literally I'm transmogging starter leather gear. Like,
Oh, actually, I think I still have my monk starter set too, which
oh
is
really?
yeah. Hopefully
That's
that
pretty
just
cool.
like gets unlocked. Like it would be great if all the like base sets get like
Yeah.
here's the gear you started with. We're just gonna like make sure it gets unlocked even if you don't have the items anymore. Although I guess you could also just make a new monk and get it that way because it should be account wide like transmog.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
That's true, yeah.
and like the blood elf male like the armor type starting set also looks really good. Maybe a little bit low resolution these days, but it is a really good looking set, and you've never been able to transmog it because it's
That's true.
all common quality.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of transmog. I do it, but and I shouldn't say this a lot. I have spent a couple 100,000 gold on some green transmog stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
uh yeah. Let's just continue on. That's fun. So yeah, so that's sort of the 10.5. That stuff's on the PTR now, so you can go check that out. Also not included in this, but there are class changes and talent changes as a part of 10.5 too. So definitely check those out. I mean, Mistweaver gets an entirely new ability, right? With these, so it'll be fun when that goes live.
Oh, also
Um,
Brewmaster talent updates. We talked about them before. There's nothing new since last time. The potential Brewmaster talent updates.
yeah. Um, yeah, so then they sort of lay out the rest of the year. So they go into spring with like you mentioned, the 10.7, which again is just more story. So we go back to the Forbidden Reach, which is the Drakthir starter zone. So I'm assuming that's just story stuff for the larger community
Yeah.
of non-Drakthir. Potentially more people get to become evokers. That's I heard some rumblings of this in
No
that.
way. Absolutely no way.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, no
Okay.
shot. I think there's no shot.
Okay. Well, maybe. So
I think that
I'm on
if
sort of the outside
I think
of like
eventually yes. I think in 10.0.7, no shot.
no shot they make evoker a large more people can be evokers. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. We also get some heritage armor for orcs and humans. I don't care about this, but 'cause it's transmog. But but no, you get heritage armor for orcs and humans, which is yeah, I guess they haven't gotten any yet, which is interesting. And then holiday up. I don't know what holiday updates are, but I'm
It's
assuming
they're
like
doing like revamps and updates of the holiday events, like
gotcha.
the Thanksgiving event and the Christmas event and all of that. It would be kind of cool if they become more like the kind of weekly events for Dragonflight, like stuff like
Okay.
doing the hunts or doing the feast. Um, nothing too crazy, but those are like actually pretty good. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we see some holiday updates, and then smack dab in the middle between spring and summer is 10.1 season 2. So this will be like this is of course the big content patches. So
right,
new raid, new zone, new mythic plus dungeon pool, of course. But they do mention user interface improvements, which is always good. I think they'll continue to make the base UI. Seems like they're a little bit more invested in that nowadays, sort of
yeah,
modernizing that a bit.
yeah,
Um, and then profession updates, which I think we'll need. It's something that I don't think we're gonna go too much in depth here, but
yeah,
what I've noticed is that like if you're leveling a profession now, good luck because you can't do it through public crafting orders at all. Because people are just gonna want like tier fours, tier five versions of the
right.
items, and you trying to level right now is just
Well, I
heresy.
think that actually
So,
speaks to a deeper issue, which is that the current crafting system has a lot of rough edges and a lot of confusing pieces.
yep.
And in particular, there's one thing that's very much bait. Well, like you can't have somebody link you their profession and see what they can actually craft. So there's
Right.
like we had one of our raiders, like somebody told them that they could craft, like they could inspire proc rank 5 of an item. And um it turns out that they misled. And
Yeah.
like they just have to trust them, right? So it turns out that they were able to craft rank 3 and inspire proc to rank 4, but there's no like you can't like double inspire proc or anything to get to rank 5 from there. So they just like dumped 50 or 100k of mats into this guy, failing to recraft their thing to
Yeah.
rank 5, which is like huge feels bad. They were very very upset by that. Like, and there's no way, like the current like ability to link your profession is basically useless.
Yeah.
It doesn't let you see what somebody could recraft to like set up a recrafting order in advance. You just have to like trust them.
Right. And that also there's also a confusing thing with the way recrafting works because like in many cases we have somebody who can make rank 4 lariats and it was cheaper to just give them the mat, like give them basically tier 2 mats across the board
Right.
and then recraft for procs.
Yeah.
Because like he could proc a rank 5 on the initial craft, but like the diamonds, one item was
The
like the
diamond.
rank 3 version of the item was like
The lariat.
40k each,
Yeah.
which
The
was like
lariat.
cra-
Sorry.
crazy.
The
So I was gonna say
lariat
like the sorry.
is special. So every item when you recraft it, to recraft it costs 50% of all of the non-bound on pickup materials, rounded down. The lariat requires 1 diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Round that down, and it's
0.
0. And so that interacts with the way that like skill point tracking works in a crafted item. When you recraft it, it like keeps, it remembers what skill point bonus you got from the previous materials that were invested in it. And
Mm-hmm.
every time you recraft it, it like takes the average. So like if you used rank 3 mats on the recraft and you used rank 2 before, the average goes up. And as you keep doing that, eventually you just like completely remove the contribution of the rank 2 diamonds,
Right, yeah.
which is
Yeah,
actually
so
phenomenally cheaper.
exactly. So yeah, so definitely some, we'll see what these profession updates are in season 2,
Yeah. There's
but yeah,
yeah.
that'll be interesting.
There's a lot like trying to reach 100 skill. Like caring about 100 skill is kind of bait. Um because you can invest your like knowledge points are the big thing. If you invest all of your knowledge points into what you're trying to craft, you will more than you will get more bonus skill than your actual like 100 points.
Oh yeah.
So like I think for leatherworking right now, you get like 45 points for leatherworking discipline. You get 30 or 40 points for just picking leather armor, and 30 or 40 points for doing each of the like the left and right side of the character sheet, and then also up to 70 additional points for investing in a specific slot. So you're like baseline before you even invest in a specific slot, you're like plus 125 skill.
Yeah.
Or sorry, yeah, plus 125. And then if you add that on, you're like plus 195.
Yeah.
So literally almost doubling your base skill contribution.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, you are right. It is kind of annoying to have that bar sitting there and you can't fill it up. I ran into that. I sat there and I just spam refreshed the public order board until I finally got enough crafts to reach 100.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of sitting there, just like watching YouTube, hitting search on the public orders.
Yeah, trying to find something. Yeah. So that's annoying, but yeah, we'll see what these profession updates are. And then from there we've like, I don't want to go, I guess there's not too much beyond season 2 stuff. Like the 10.15 we get a mega dungeon, which is
Yep.
cool that they're going to continue to do those. Love these sort of mega dungeons. Those are always fun. I guess more world events, which we'll see what the probably just an update to the Primal Storm system, right? We'll probably retire the Primal Storm system at this point and do something new. And then content and system updates, basically probably just tuning stuff, right? Like whether
Right.
that's new talent tuning, new tuning to previous systems. Like we'll see what that ends up being. Um, and then 10.17 looks exactly like 10.07 in that it's story stuff, holiday stuff, and then system stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is where the
They
sort of
start getting
idea breaks
very
down a little.
vague at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then finally season 3, which is next fall, winter timeframe. So about a little less than a year from now, we'll get new raid, new zone, new mythic dungeon pool, and additional stuff. So like I think the biggest thing is them saying like, hey, we're gonna do this patch cycle, which I think is cool. So at least every 3 months, we'll get some sort of like dot release increase,
Yeah.
or dot release increase. So I think it's cool that they've laid it out like this, and you get an idea of what is upcoming. I mean, the second half of the year very vague, other than like we'll
Yeah.
continue to release patches with updates. Hooray!
Yeah.
Um, but I think in terms of like the next 6 months, it's very clear. Like you've got 10.05, 10.07, and then season 2 this summer, which is
Yeah.
which is cool.
And so I've brought this up before on the show. This is not that far off of the patch cycle that Final Fantasy 14 uses.
Yeah, and
Where
sorry.
basically like the idea with I think FF14 is not every patch is for every player. Where like you
Mhm.
have raid patches and those are for raiders, and they have some story stuff, but also just like a raid for raiders. But then you have in between patches, and there's like a patch that like this patch is for crafters, and there's a patch that this patch is just like story stuff, and that's for most people, but not every raider is interested in doing it. They will go through it so they can unlock the next raid when it comes. You know,
Hmm.
not really their cup of tea, and that's okay. So like what we're seeing with this is minor patches have new world content, new story content, new transmog, that kind of stuff. I would actually kind of like to see some of the profession stuff between a major patch, but maybe the profession updates are just going to be really really big, so we have to do this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That could be it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's and I think and that's to be honest with you, I think that's like if anything, that's like the influence of I think someone like Holly, right?
yeah,
In that like I don't want to say like over the past year we've seen a ton of turnover. I think just on the Warcraft team, particularly in leadership. I know like Ian's still there, and you've still got a lot of older people who have moved up. Like Morgan Day's been there since the days of I think he joined back in BC. He said so. Like he's been there for forever. But at least at the leadership level with like John Voight and Holly being the big one. I think this is sort of maybe the like a change in the way that wow like they're going to approach like World of Warcraft content, right? And like how
yeah,
they get these updates and how they do it, which I think is super cool. And really fun because like we've never like we said we've never seen anything like this in terms of like a roadmap. It's sort of always felt like it's been fly by the seat of your pants from Blizzard, or like it's been like
yeah,
they have an idea of when they want to push something out, but they don't tell anybody until it's like they're ready to announce. I think
yeah,
this just saying like, hey, here's our roadmap, here's our plan. I think if they're honest with, I think the one thing that I hope they do here is that if they are going to miss these dates or these dates are going to push, they're like honest about it. They're like,
yeah,
here's the updated roadmap. It's not just like, oh, we missed, we'll figure it out. It's like, here's now this will be, summer into, or sorry, fall into winter for 10.1.5 and 10.1.7, right?
yeah. And
Um,
I think the biggest thing for me is this says they're going to be a lot more focused on getting more frequent patches out,
yeah,
right? Like this is the kind of thing where in Shadowlands, for example, or BFA, these .7 patches would just be part of like the .1, .2 patches. Um, and so
right.
even some of the stuff that we're getting in the .5 patches would be part of the major like .1 patch. We didn't get story content in the .5 patches in Shadowlands. We got systems updates, and that's it, pretty much. And they
Sure.
were big systems updates. Like we talked a lot about that. Like 10.0.5 was huge system update, and that 1.5 had even more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But the all the world content, everything was all in the big major patch, and that was the patch that was supposed to be everything for everyone. And now they're spreading it out a little bit more, which I think is good. Like
Yeah.
you're going to be dealing with less of like, okay, there's 6 months. I've completed like this major patch. Now there's 6 months until the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost helps keep people engaged, right? Like
Yeah,
yeah, like the like it keeps people like engaged with like even if it's a smaller amount of content, you come back for like the one or two. Even like let's say 10 out of 5 has like 2 weeks worth of content for someone in a previous expansion, like you're saying, like it would be a .1 release, and maybe those 2 weeks are bundled in with like 3 or 4 weeks of other stuff you're doing, and now you've spent a month maybe playing the game, and now you'll quit for 5 months before the next
right.
content. Where like this gives you like every 3 months there's something new that maybe keeps you engaged for like a week or two, or you're just like, wow, they're making continued updates, they're making continued changes. I'll just
Yeah,
keep playing because it's
yeah,
it's fun, right?
yeah,
So it's not a stale game. So yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
I
yeah, I think or so sorry, I guess my
Go ahead.
last little point here is like, yeah, I'm just super I think I'm excited by this in terms of like I will probably always play WoW no matter what. But this at least like the fact that they'll put this out and they'll also like even the 10.0.5 patch has a bunch of talent changes in it. Like
Yeah,
if you can see that continue to happen, like it just keeps the game fresh and different. And even if it's not Mistweavers or like monks getting the changes, like some other class getting changes, which means like hopefully like we're around the corner next, or like I don't know, it just keeps the game. I think it's just change is always good. I think in my mind
yeah.
for stuff like this. So
This is good. This is like one of the lingering criticisms I think of the past couple of expansions that a lot of people have had is just like the big gaps in new stuff coming out.
Exactly.
And so this is good. This is good. Um,
Yeah.
there's very there's not a lot of the main downside here is if they have to keep pushing back these minor patches, but I don't really think they will. They all seem like fairly well scoped to like we are doing this one thing and then there's a couple of extra things. Right? Like the trading post and Primal tomorrow are the big things for 10.0.5 in terms of like complicated,
Yeah.
big new content stuff. There's the transmog thing, which is probably also complicated, but that was originally part of 10.0 and got bumped to this
Right.
patch. So it's like probably also partially. But then like 10.0.7, there's like 2 bits of content stuff: Return to Forbidden Reach, Human Orc Heritage Armor. Like we're doing these two things. It's not some big like Zereth Mortis zone that they're trying to do. Forbidden Reach already exists. They're adding quests to it, which is a lot of work, but they're not doing that and also making a new zone.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, I'm excited. This is good. Dragonflight. So I think the Doomsayers have mostly quieted down now that like we're like a month into the expansion, over a month into the expansion,
Yeah.
and Dragonflight's good. Like it is, yeah, it's good.
I've like other I think other to me it's the only frustrating part I'll say to me with everything in the expansion is just the profession system in
Yeah,
that like it's not it seems like it's not a wow system. Like I think in many cases a lot of wow systems, at least surface level, are fairly easy to understand. There's always some like nuance underneath of some of them that are like,
yeah,
hey, like to really min max this thing, you need to do X, Y, or Z thing. But surface level, you can get by with just a basic understanding of most things. I think
yeah,
with professions, it's not the case in that like you basically need to read and understand like what all the different stats are, like
yeah,
how the different talents interact with things. That would be my only complaint. The rest of it, if you don't have to interact with crafting, like just rest of it,
yeah.
awesome.
I think
Like the
that's very consistent with the comments from people in my guild where like the one thing that they are really unhappy with is just how confusing crafting is. Like they want to get their 418 crafted whatever,
mhm,
and figuring out how to do that. Like if they didn't have people in guild, like we have somebody in guild that can make lariats at or 418. Like if they
mhm.
didn't have him to explain to them how this works and like kind of guide them through the process and be like a trusted person that's not going to scam them,
Yeah,
it would
exactly.
be so much worse.
Yeah.
But now we have people where like I had to go outside of the guild to get my Frostfire belt upgraded to 418. You can't get all of the items crafted within the guild 418 that you would. So
Mhm.
they're starting to have to reach out beyond that, and sometimes it is going badly. And I think there's a lot of improvement that Blizzard can, not to the functionality of the craft, but to the like usability and understanding of it, right?
Yeah.
Like the crafting order stuff, I think is mostly okay. Public orders are dead. Nobody posts crafting orders in public. Like I sat there for a couple of afternoons in a row sniping crafting orders just to hit 100 skill.
That's hilarious.
Um, that shouldn't be how that works. Like honestly, like the skill up bar to 100 honestly like might just need to go away. Like it
Yeah.
might just be dead. Like and just replaced with the knowledge system. Like
I
having
could
both
see
is
that. Yeah. Yeah.
kind of awkward. But
Yeah.
mostly, I think the most important thing is that like you should be able to ask somebody for a link to their profession and then be able to tell if they can craft the thing you want to craft. And because it's
Yeah.
not just like the base item anymore. It's way more complicated than that. Like I should be able to link you my leatherworking and you should be able to like slot in your embellishment and your primal infusion and your missive and see that I have guaranteed 415 and a base of like 30% chance for it to be 418. You should be able to tell that directly from that UI and not have to like take me at my word.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And then some other things like the contribution of I like material quality to the crafting. Like it should there's a bunch of things like that that could be more clear. Um, that would go a long way to making it less frustrating, because I think that is a large part of like the like frustration and like unfun bits of the crafting stuff is like I want this crafted and I'm just confused. Like being
Yeah.
confused is not fun. It's like the opposite of fun. Sitting there being confused is just very unpleasant. And it's this big complicated system and people are still learning about it, right? Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still figuring out like I figured out some stuff this week about how I should have invested my knowledge points to be able to max out every slot at once instead of only specific slots. Feels bad, but still learning the details of the system to figure out how everything works. And if you just want your 418 crafted, you don't want to be that person. You're not
Yeah.
investing that time. I just want my 418, dude. Just give me my
Yeah.
418.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I want to put in the time or the effort to like level this up. I just want it. Right. And like, how
Yeah,
do I easily just give someone money? And yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
yeah. That makes sense. It makes sense. So, um, but cool. Yeah. I think, yeah. Overall though, great
Yeah.
expansion so far.
I will
Great
say,
expansion.
being a crafter is way better than in previous. It is way more there's way more fun you had doing crafting than in previous expansions, even if there are still a bunch of rough edges, and there are.
Yeah.
Like the complete lack of public crafting orders, which means that I can only really do crafting when crafts kind of rough. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, Dragonflight's good. This is so much better of a launch than either of the past two expansions.
Yeah.
Just unbelievably better. Yeah, all those people on Reddit are like, just wait 4 weeks and people will be up in arms around everything.
Yeah.
They were wrong.
No. Yeah. That's true. Um,
But I think that is going to be it for our show today.
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed the show and you want to support it and the other work that we do on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come join the Discord. That is where you will get all the latest information, like this flaring cowl tech and walkers.
Yes.
That popped up first in the Discord, and there's an explainer there and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to keep up to date on that stuff, that is the best way. But for the show today, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.